For millennia, humanity has housed the divine in stone. Cathedrals and altars were built to enforce physical permanence and centralized authority. But over the last 30 years, that physical infrastructure has collided with a completely different kind of space. Digital media functions as a spatial environment with its own inherent structural logic, decentralized, fluid, and continuous. To understand what happens when ancient traditions enter this environment, we can analyze world religions as complex operating systems interacting with this new hardware architecture. It is a mistake to assume that a religious institution's digital footprint is solely a matter of budget or a desire to modernize. The deciding factor is theological. A tradition's foundational axioms regarding authority, physical embodiment, and the nature of reality dictate its technical compatibility with the internet. Theology acts as a strict structural filter. It dictates exactly how a faith system survives, mutates, or fails to execute in the digital age. Catholic and Orthodox traditions represent Christian operating systems built on rigid, hierarchical authority and physical mediation. Translated into network architecture, this is a strict hub-and-spoke model. A central node validates and distributes data down to individual users. But when users attempt to execute core religious functions remotely, the data flow breaks. The network rejects the request. This is St. Peter's Basilica. The vast physical centralization seen here is a requirement of the Catholic operating system, relying on geographical authenticity. The structural bottleneck here is the sacrament. Theologically, a sacrament requires physical matter, bread, wine, oil, and synchronous embodied participation. It cannot be digitized. In 2002, the Vatican confirmed this structural limitation under Pope John Paul II, issuing a decree stating that there are no sacraments on the internet. For this operating system, the internet is restricted to a read-only information repository. True, decentralized religious execution remains strictly prohibited. The Orthodox operating system, visibly anchored by structures like the Cathedral of Christ the Savior, shares this hierarchical design but adds an epistemological objection. Orthodox theology rejects the concept of a virtual avatar. Constructing a digital double or a curated online persona is viewed as building a deceptive mask. Because Orthodox theology demands transparent truth, institutional leaders like Patriarch Kirill argue that anonymous online engagement is ontologically incompatible with their faith. Hierarchical, sacrament-bound traditions structurally resist digital interactivity because their operating systems require physical embodiment to function. The Protestant tradition operates on a different logic. Its theological framework removed the necessity of a mediated physical priesthood to connect with the divine. When mapped to a network, the hub-and-spoke structure dissolves. It becomes a distributed peer-to-peer network. This aligns with the Protestant concept of the priesthood of all believers, where every individual node has the authority to transmit data without central mediation. Without the bottleneck of a physical sacrament, digital adoption within Protestantism varies wildly based on the ideological constraints of individual groups. At one extreme, evangelical movements like Hillsong operate as high-bandwidth networks, prioritizing global missionizing and bypassing physical limitations. They broadcast mediatized hybrid events across multiple platforms to ensure constant decentralized expansion. On the exact same distributed network, you find the opposite extreme, groups like the Laestadian movement, which deliberately restrict their own bandwidth. Laestadian theology focuses on asceticism, humility, and protection from personal vanity. They view the internet as an active distraction. While they have the structural capacity to expand digitally, they deliberately throttle their engagement to preserve close-knit, physical communities. When physical bottlenecks are removed, digital integration is gated by a group's ideological stance on expansion versus isolation. Shifting away from Western systems reveals a tradition whose underlying logic shares striking commonalities with the digital age. This is Norbert Wiener, the founder of cybernetics. In developing systems tracking and feedback loops, he frequently noted parallels between mathematical models and Eastern thought. Those parallels exist because early Buddhist epistemology functioned with a logic remarkably similar to a digital system, long before the invention of the computer. To manage the continuous flow of reality, early Buddhists encoded information into discrete, numbered data packets. Lists of rules and truths were counted on the digits to ensure data was transmitted without corruption. This evolved into the Abhidharma system, which analyzed human experience as a combination of discrete, atomic psychic particles called dharmas. Every mental state was cataloged as a combination of these finite units, much like how modern computing represents information using sequences of ones and zeros. This method of breaking down continuity applies to visual representation as well. A computer monitor outputs thousands of individual pixels that our minds stitch together to create the appearance of a solid entity. This pixel array reflects the Buddhist concept of the 5 aggregates, or khandhas. Buddhism teaches that the self is not a permanent soul, but a continuous illusion generated by flickering elements coming together and dissolving moment to moment. This lack of a self-existent substrate, the concept of emptiness, provided the conceptual foundation for the invention of the mathematical zero in India, which is essential to binary computing. Without a central soul, reality is defined by dependent origination, the belief that the universe is an interdependent web of being without a central hub. Placed over modern technology, this ancient metaphysical map aligns with decentralized internet topology. It is a boundless mesh network lacking a central validator. These synergies suggest why the Buddhist operating system compiles so efficiently within a digital environment. Its framework, built on discrete data packets and decentralized interdependence, shares the same core logic as modern network topology. Professional scholarship is only just beginning to map these ontological synergies. The Oxford Handbook of Digital Religion establishes the scholarly framework for this study, moving beyond simple descriptions of churches on the web. For years, researchers used the metaphor of surfing the web, assuming religious adoption of technology was a linear ride from the offline world into cyberspace. But digital integration behaves closer to fluid dynamics. The visible surface trends are driven by massive circular underwater currents operating far out of sight. Scholars now identify a 5th wave of digital religion, a permanent hybridization where the offline and online spheres are inseparable. As new technologies emerge, a religious institution's survival is not determined by its desire to modernize or the size of its media budget. The true drivers of technological behavior are these deep, unseen theological undercurrents. A religion's viability in the coming centuries depends on how successfully its ancient operating system compiles within a digital reality.